Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about how powerful an AR-15 is, okay? And one of the best ways to understand how powerful something is to compare it to other things that are similar, okay? So we're going to use a unit of measure called energy, okay? And energy, basically, you take the velocity, you square it, and you multiply it by the mass, then you divide it by a conversion factor. The reason why we're doing this is because if you just look at velocity, well, you know, a 22 is faster than a 45, but the 45 is more powerful. You know, likewise, a 45 is heavier than a 5.56, but the 5.56 is more powerful. So we need to look at some formula that will take into account both velocity and mass. Now, velocity is more important. That's why we're squaring the velocity. It's velocity times velocity, you know, times mass, and then you divide it by that conversion factor. The purpose of the conversion factor is so that we basically get nice round numbers that we can, you know, wrap our heads around. You know, we don't want numbers that have like 10 decimal places or something that's in the millions, because, you know, who can remember that kind of stuff? So we want simple numbers that we can remember. So that's why we have this conversion number here. Right. So there's two sides to this chart. That's the AR-15 side. And there's some other calibers on this side that we're going to look at. We're going to look at these first so that we have a frame of reference, okay? And these are all average numbers, okay? So if we look at 9mm, it's going to have an energy of 350 foot-pounds, okay? 45 ACP, 380 foot-pounds, 40 caliber, 450 foot-pounds, okay? So your pistol calibers are the common pistol calibers that people carry are going to be somewhere between 300 and 500 foot-pounds. Now over here I have the 30-06. The 30-06 was used in the M1 Garand during World War II. It was a main battle rifle. Okay, that has about 3,000 foot-pounds of energy. So it's actually just slightly below that, but it comes pretty close to 3,000 foot-pounds of energy. So you can see that this completely dwarfs any of these numbers over there. Okay, that's a full-size battle rifle. This is, you know, the what hunters typically hunt with. It's what snipers typically, you know, do their work with. Okay, so now we have a frame of reference. Let's go over on this side and let's look at a 5.56 caliber shot out of an AR-15 with a 16-inch barrel. Okay, at the muzzle, okay, at zero distance, it's going to have 1,200 foot-pounds, 1,200 foot-pounds. Okay, if this was a 20-inch barrel, okay, that number would be 1,300. Okay, so the 20-inch barrel gets an extra 100 foot-pounds of energy. The military actually uses a 14.5-inch barrel, right? So it's a little bit shorter than your 16-inch. And basically, what they decided, they said, you know what, that extra 100 or 200 foot-pounds of energy really doesn't matter that much. So when you come back over here, you can see why the debate between 9mm, 40, 45 is peanuts. It really doesn't matter that much. An extra 50 or 100 foot-pounds on this side over here is not a big deal. I usually recommend to people to carry a 9mm because that extra capacity is going to probably be a little bit more useful than that extra energy. Okay, so coming back over here, 5.56. At the muzzle, 1,200 foot-pounds of energy. At 100 yards, 800 foot-pounds of energy, okay? 800 foot-pounds is what you get out of a 44 Magnum, okay? So once we go past 100 yards, okay, we're now in handgun territory for the AR-15, okay? So at 100 yards, we got 800 foot-pounds. 200 yards, 600 foot-pounds, okay? That's the power of a 357, okay? 300 yards, we got 500 foot-pounds, okay? So that's basically a 10mm or a hot 40, okay? 400 yards, we're at 400 foot-pounds, so that's like a weak 40. At 500 yards, we've got 300 foot-pounds of energy, so that's like a weak 9 or a 380, okay? So you can see that past the 100 yards, there's a drop off. You're now in handgun territory. Why would the military want something like this? Why would they use something like this? Well, here's the thing. In this first 100 yards, okay, that's where the enemy is the most dangerous because, you know, number one, you got to consider the mindset. Okay, once they're within 100 yards, their adrenaline is a lot higher. They're taking fire. They can see the enemy. So if they are wounded in that 100 yards, there's a good chance that they may not feel the wounds, or even if they know they're wounded, they're going to try to continue to push forward because they're probably going to feel that the best way for them to live is to kill the enemy that's in front of them, okay? Now, past 100 yards, right, if you're outside of 100 yards, if an enemy is wounded, the chances are that they're going to look for a medic, okay? They're going to look to get off the battlefield. They're going to look for help, and that has the added benefit of taking a number of people out of combat, okay? Because if you wound one man, it's probably going to take 3 or 4 men to care for that person. So that's a good reason why the military would want to use the 5.56, knowing that past 100 yards, you're in pistol territory as far as power. Because if you wound people, you're going to take them out of combat. However, within that 100 yards, where people's adrenaline's a lot higher, where you need immediate stopping power. You need something that's going to cause damage to surrounding tissue. So it's that the extra velocity of the 5.56 is very useful, compared to using pistol rounds, within 100 yards. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about using an AR-15 for home defense. Now, usually if people are living in an apartment building where they have like lots of people living around them and all they have is like thin sheetrock between them, I will usually recommend an AR-9, okay, or a 9mm rifle, okay, something that's not gonna have that much penetrating power. But where I live in the rural area that I live, there's usually more than 100 yards between houses. So once you get out to 100 yards, you're in handgun territory anyway. Okay, so that's why the AR-15 is not dangerous, or not any more dangerous than if you were using a large revolver, for example, okay, or 40 caliber. The thing to understand with with the typical barriers that you would have around the house, like like sheetrock and plywood. Okay, when the 5.56 enters that barrier, it starts destabilizing, it starts spinning, it starts doing weird things. I've seen lots of penetration tests where people typically take like 10 layers of sheetrock and they will stack them up like one behind the other, and they will say, yeah, 5.56 goes through all 10 barriers. Well, 22 probably goes through all 10 too, as if you take those same barriers and you space them, let's say about 15 feet apart, what you're going to see is going to be very different, because once the 5.56 round goes through that first barrier, okay, it's not going to start destabilizing. It's going to start rotating. By the time it gets to the second barrier, it's going to go in sideways, okay? And then it's going to continue to destabilize, and it goes to the third barrier. Again, it's going through sideways. It's losing lots of its velocity every time, not just because of the barrier, but also because of the distance between the barriers. So here's the thing with these penetration tests. The air between the barriers, the amount of space between the barriers counts. Okay, so if you got barriers that are like one right behind the other, that's not a good test, a good realistic test. So if you've got the 5.56, down to 800 foot-pounds, when it's not going through a barrier, okay, when it does go through a barrier and then goes out, you're gonna lose a lot of power. It's probably gonna destabilize to the point that it's tumbling into the ground. Okay, I haven't actually tested that, but I would love for somebody to try that test. I've tried to do it, but I have not been able to do it in such a way that I can repeat it. Because if the test is not repeatable, it's not good enough. And the reason why it's not repeatable is because once you space your barriers out, and it goes through the second or third barrier, the bullet becomes so destabilized that it never gets to the fourth or fifth barrier. It ends up somewhere in the dirt, and I really can't say where it is, or so basically it veers off course to the point that I really don't have useful information. Okay, so but it would be great if somebody could figure out a way to do that test and be able to do that test in a way that's repeatable, so that we can say, okay, this is what happens when a 5.56 round goes through multiple layers of sheetrock that are 10 feet apart or 15 feet apart. I think that's a lot more useful than having them like stacked one on top of the other. If you guys find this information, like this information rather, find it useful, Give this video a thumbs up, share it. I'll talk to you guys next time.